Cairo, Seattle.
It's time to get schooled with the professor, John Clayton.
Welcome to Schooled with the Professor, and great chance now to catch up with Brandon Stokley with a lot of things to talk about. And of course, I guess the big subject to break things over is going to be this weekend. This weekend, Peyton Manning is going to have his statue unveiled, and I know you're going to be back there because I would imagine through the years, have you emerged as one of his best friends and a guy that, because I know you had 2 tours with him, both in Indianapolis and Denver, and of course I know you're looking forward to being back and looking at that statue.
Oh, yeah, no question about it. I like to think that we're really good friends, but I don't know. That's a question that you're probably going to have to ask him, John, because I don't want to speak, for him. I might say, yeah, we're really good friends, and then you ask him, you say, no, I'm not really that good friends with him. I'm just kidding, though. But, yeah, we obviously are really close, and it's going to be a cool experience this weekend to be able to go to Indy. And it's always great to get back there and just see the statue and just kind of take in the events of this weekend and see some old teammates. So I'm really looking forward to that.
How do you think the statue is going to look? Because I would imagine that it means so much, because I know just going to Lucas Oil so many times, he had the big portrait out there, and it was really kind of a stadium that he built because he's meant so much to that franchise.
Yeah, that's interesting because I was talking to my 13-year-old son about that last week, and we said, what do you think the statue's going to look like? Is it going to be him, kind of waiting for the ball to be snapped from the center, or is it going to be him kind of dropping back with that football up in the air, that that picture that he's known for? So I think it's going to be probably that one where he's kind of dropping back and has the football up, ready to throw it. That's going to be my guess. I don't know. It's going to be cool to witness it firsthand when they unveil it and just be a part of all the ceremonies. It's going to be a lot of fun.
What was it like playing with Peyton?
It was awesome. It was demanding. We worked our tails off every single day. Every single day at practice was, After Thursday practice, which seems like it was 2.5 hours, 2 hour 45-minute practices that would end in a 2-minute drill, and those 2-minute drills always started at about the 10-yard line, no timeouts, and you're 55 seconds left. So I would wake up Friday and I'd be more sore than I would be Monday after a game. But they were just demanding, they were grueling, but at the same time they were rewarding, and it was so much fun to play with them because he never asked you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. So it was awesome, so much fun, and we had so many. Our offense was just so good. It's just a lot of fun.
How demanding was he? I mean, examples of things that he would do, because I know he was always his game was so much preparation, and he wanted everything to be done perfectly.
Yes, just attention to detail. When you're in the meeting rooms, and the route needs to be at 12 yards, and you ran it at 11. Hey, we got to get our depth there, and just out there on the practice field. If things weren't going good, look, you're going to do it over and over and over again. And if practices weren't going good, there's a level of excellence that the bar was set at, and he wouldn't let you go under it. And so there was no practices where, you could just, we're not feeling it today. It's just one of those days. That wasn't the case with Peyton Manning. You had to bring it every single day.
Which, of course, but it worked so well during games. And, were there certain things that he wanted out of you and out of the other receivers?
Well, yeah, he wanted us to catch a lot of balls and not drop any, and pay attention to the details. And that, for me, that was what was so important, and that's why I was able to, after I left there, I came to Denver, and the teams would really appreciate me and what I could bring to not only quarterback position, but the quarterbacks like that. Look, they knew exactly where I was going to be when I was supposed to be there, and I got that from Peyton Manning. And then also with the receivers in the receiver room, and just the attention to detail, and I got all that from Peyton Manning. And so that's just the types of things that, what's made him so great. Like you said, look, we grinded during the week, but man, the payoff was Sunday. It was just, you go out there and just have fun, and it just felt like it was easy. But during the week was hard and demanding, but the payoff Sunday was well worth it.
As demanding as he was also a big practical joker. What type of things did he try to do to you and some of your teammates?
Well, I usually was on his good side, and I always was really careful not to get on his bad side, especially in training camp, because, everybody liked Peyton Manning a lot better than they liked Brandon Stokley, and everybody wanted to help Peyton Manning out. And so he was always going to have the last word. And for me, I always had to stay on his good side because I never wanted to be on the other end of one of those pranks. But training camp was always great, whether you're putting a bucket of water or a trash can of water on somebody's door, you knock, you run, they open it up, and their floor is wet for the next week. Things like that. You take a coach's golf cart, you put it in the middle of a little pond, or you take one of the coach's car, you wrap it up and you put it on the practice field. Things like that, just fun jokes that you do during training camp to help that time go by fast. But yeah, he was about having fun. He's about camaraderie. But then when it was time to work, it was time to work. See, that's what made him so special was he loved the locker room, loved the camaraderie, but once you hit that practice field, it's time to work.
Yeah, I would imagine. Did you ever get him good on something?
John, I always try to be really careful. You got to know who you're messing with there. So if you get him, you got to realize there will be retribution, and he will be firing back at you. So I was always really careful not to mess with Peyton Manning.
Very, very smart to do that because you're right. He can get you back pretty well. And as great as it was, every year when they would go into November or so, it was always the game between the New England Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts, Peyton versus Tom Brady, because it was always like this is the defining mark of where teams are and what the championships. What was it like to be in those games?
It was most of the time when I played in them, we just had trouble beating them, and but just to watch. You knew it was usually those games meant, hey, you're going to the Super Bowl or you're going home because they were big games. And even in the regular season, you knew the implications of those games because if you beat them, now you're going to have that game at home. If you lost to them, you're probably going to be playing on the road. And that meant, that's the difference between winning and losing those games in the playoffs. So obviously those games were always really important. And, people made it out to be Tom versus Peyton, but, it was really just about the Colts versus the Patriots and trying to, like I said, move on to usually those games were in the playoffs, and it was about moving on to that next step, and usually that was the Super Bowl.
No doubt. But, boy, you talk about intense, the rivalry, and the games were just so great.
Yeah, they were. I mean, there were so many classics, and you look at, I think about when we won the Super Bowl in 2006, that AFC Championship game when the Patriots had us blown out, and somehow, some way, Peyton led that comeback in the second half. And I mean, it's when you're in his situation and you've had struggles against the Patriots, and then to be in that situation and to find a way to come back in the second half against that team, and that was special. I mean, that was as good as it gets.
No doubt. One of the things I was always admired about the way that he ran the offense and Tom Brady ran the offense and it affected you because, I mean, you, Wes Welker, were the guys that really evolved as the slot receivers. And talk about that role and how it evolved and where it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, when I got to Indy, there wasn't a lot of teams that were really focused on, okay, you're just going to be the slot receiver. You're going to be in the slot. I mean, I played outside, and I would move in the slot a little bit in Indy, but you just didn't play the slot. That wasn't a role for you really. You had to be an outside receiver and a slot receiver. And I got to Indy, and it just kind of worked out that way, because we had two really good outside receivers, and so then they just put me in the slot. And then I just kind of stayed there. It's kind of weird. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just going to stay here. And I moved around a little bit, and Reggie would move inside, and I would go outside. Marvin would move inside. And then we just kind of settled into that role of me being the slot receiver, those guys being the outside receivers. But a lot of teams weren't doing that. They weren't having a guy mainly as just a slot receiver. So it was kind of cool to be a part of that and to be a part of those teams, obviously. playing with that group of guys with Dallas Clark and, Edgerrin James and Marvin and Reggie, and then, have Peyton orchestrate and everything. That was fun. I mean, it was a blast.
Yeah, I would imagine. What type of routes do you run out of that, and how that's evolved now? Because, again, you can see a guy like Doug Baldwin here in Seattle, and you see great slot receivers all around the league, but there's a specialty that you help perfect along with Welker and others.
Yeah, it's all about knowing the coverage, and it's such a mismatch problem for defenses, because if you put a nickel back out there, then teams can just try to run the football on you, and usually that third or fourth corner is not very good. So it's one of those situations where teams have figured out that, man, we can present these defenses with such mismatch problems if we do have a good slot receiver that knows what he's doing. And the playbook, you can run any route that's available, crossing routes, vertical routes, and control the middle of the field. And so you see the importance of having a good slot receiver and what that can do to defenses and the problems it can cause for defenses and defensive coordinators.
Of course, the one thing that you didn't have the advantage of is the defenseless receiver, because, you're in there, and, of course, now they're more conscious of trying to protect the receivers and not have the hits. But, it was the wild, wild west when you were doing it, because, you're now in the middle of the field, and you're vulnerable to any kind of a hit.
Yeah, no question about it. I think I could have played, a couple more years if they had those rules in place that they have now. But it was a different football game, and they're doing a lot of good things to try to change the rules and help the safety, but it's still football. And so it definitely was different going across the middle 10 years ago than what it is today. And so I'm a little bit jealous. You can just kind of go across the middle and not worry about somebody taking your head off. But that wasn't the case back in the day. But, it is what it is. Like I said, I think the NFL is doing a good job of trying to help the players and player safety. So hopefully that continues to be a good thing for the players.
Yeah, no doubt, because, again, longevity is what you want, and you don't want those big hits. What was the biggest hit that you ever had? What was the biggest hit that you ever had?
Man, John, I took a few of them. That's for sure. I remember one against the Patriots in Foxborough in the playoffs. I was running across over the middle on a vertical route, a post route, and they were playing two-man, and I made a good move on my guy, and I lost my guy, and I expected the safety to be wide, and it was one of those plays where I expected a catch and a run. And so I didn't expect to get hit. Sometimes you can brace yourself if you're expecting that big hit. I didn't expect the big hit, so I was thinking touchdown. So I caught it in stride and was getting in full gear, and then somebody just came. I don't even remember who it was. It was their safety. He just came head on and just cleaned me up. So that was one that stands out. Sante Samuel got me one good time with the Patriots. So it seems like all the big hits came from the Patriots. I guess that's why I don't like them very much.
No doubt. Yeah, of course, that's kind of you're probably enjoying the fact they're getting off to a start and they're giving up more than 300 passing yards a game to four different quarterbacks.
Well, when you struggle against a team and they kept me from probably winning 2 more Super Bowls, it's hard to get over that. It's hard to get over that. Always hold a grudge, but you know what? They've been great for so long. It's been impressive to watch the run that they've been on here in the last, I don't know what it's 20 years or so. It's been really impressive.
Now, you were able to get back with him in Denver when he came for the chance to get that one Super Bowl run. What was the difference of him when he was in Denver compared to where he was in his early days in Indianapolis with you?
Yeah, you know what? He was a little bit more mellow, I would say. And not saying that he was laid back or anything like that. He was still very, he comes to work every day and he's a true pro, and he brings it every single day. But I think, coming off of that injury that he had, he realizes, he wasn't going to play forever. And so he was just a little, I would say just a little bit more laid back. And I think it was a good thing. Maybe like I said, I believe that injury played a part in it, and dealing with that and going through the rehab and just, I think that played a big part in it. But he still was Peyton Manning. Don't get me wrong. He was still Peyton Manning. He was still out there, and still upset if you didn't do things the right way, and still very demanding. But at the same time, it's, like I told Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker when he decided to come to Denver, I said, listen, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of work. But if you do it, I promise you the payoff is going to be out of this world. And so that's kind of how it unfolded.
In your travels, and you've been to a lot of great places, you had one year with the Seahawks, and it was Pete Carroll's first year. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was so much fun. I really enjoyed myself. I got cut here in training camp in Denver. I was hurt, and Jeremy Bates, the offensive coordinator in Seattle, and Jed Fish, the quarterback coach there, were both former coaches of mine here in Denver. So once I got healthy a couple weeks into the season, I went out there for a workout, signed that day, and there was so much turnover going on over there. They were flipping over the roster. That's what, first-year coaches and DMs do. They try to turn the roster over. But, man, I tell you what, we had so much fun. I had a blast, and we ended up, somehow winning the division and somehow getting into the playoffs, which I think we were all kind of shocked about. Because of all the turnover, and that's hard to do. And we got into the playoffs, which was awesome. And then, somehow, some way, we ended up beating the defending Super Bowl champions and the New Orleans Saints at home. And everybody remembers that game. And Marshawn Lynch kind of sealed the deal there with that epic run of his. And so it was just a special year. A lot of fun to be a part of that. To be able to say I played a year in Seattle was so special. When I look back on that year, and just very thankful for that opportunity. And it was just, like I said, it was such a blast.
Yeah, and of course, I would imagine it was a little bit different than what you experienced in your other stops, because you have a basketball hoop up in the meeting rooms and in the auditorium, and Pete with all his motivating type of things that he tries.
Yeah, and that's what made it fun for me, because it kind of brought that college atmosphere to the NFL. And so for me, I hadn't been around that for so long. It was something different, something unique. And then it was just the guys on the team were so great. And and Pete was a little bit different, obviously, but I loved his mentality. I loved the energy they brought to the building every single day, him and his coaches, and just the word competition. And that's what I love. I love to compete, and that's kind of, Pete's big thing there. And to be there and to watch these guys now, you're talking about Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor being rookies when I was there, and to see them develop and know what kind of great guys those guys are, and to see the type of players that they turned out to be. It was a special year, and to be a part of, the start of Pete Carroll and the success that he's had there was always will be a highlight of mine.
Well, you're on the air now in 104.3, The Fan in Denver, and doing a good job with the radio in that. So let's kind of look at the AFC West, because it seems to me that the AFC West right now might be the best division in football.
Yeah, kind of that's what I thought it was going to be, obviously, heading into the season. We'll see how this Derek Carr injury plays out with the Raiders. But you look at Kansas City, the things that they're doing, defensively you expected them to be pretty good, but offensively they kind of taken that next step. I love the creativity of Andy Reid, how he's using Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, and Kelsey. And Alex Smith is playing his best football of his career to go with that defense. They're a tough group. You look at the Raiders, how will they respond with this injury? They've kind of come back to earth, to reality a little bit off of last year's, the success that they've had last year. But they got a good stretch coming up with a lot of home games. Let's see how they handle the next 2, 3, 4 weeks without Derek Carr. And the Broncos have kind of surprised me, I can't lie. I did not think they would have the running game that they had. I did not think that they would be able to stop the run. Their rush defense looks like it did in 2015 on their way to a Super Bowl. So this defense is back in form of a couple years ago, and Trevor Siemian is only quarterback that's going to get better and better. And if they can continue to run the football like they've run it, they're going to be a dangerous team.
Yeah, because they have looked good, and I think that Siemian, I know a lot of people don't have the respect for, but I know John Elway does, the coaching staff does, and the players do too. Because I know what John Elway's told me is that Trevor has that it factor.
Right. Yeah, and the guy, his 7th round draft pick out of Northwestern, had to earn everything that he's gotten in the NFL. Nobody thought he was going to win the starting job last year. That was going to be Mark Sanchez's job. Somehow, some way, he won. This year, it was going to be Paxton Lynch's job. They drafted Paxton in the first round 2 years ago. So this was going to be his job. It was time for him to play. You have to play your first-round pick. Oh, I forgot. Well, Trevor Siemian beat him out. He was the better player. So Trevor's overcome odds. He battles every single day, the underdog role, and all he does is go out there and play usually good, sound, solid football, quarterback play, and just gets the job done. And so I think the world and the country is going to start to realize that Trevor Siemian's a pretty good quarterback.
And, of course, you'll get to see a great quarterback over the weekend with the statue coming up in Indianapolis with Peyton Manning. Brandon Stokley, thanks for joining us.
John, thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate it.
And that does it for this week's podcast. In between episodes, you can follow me on Twitter at Clayton ESPN. If you enjoy these weekly one-on-one conversations, consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to the show. Thanks for listening. See you next time on Schooled with the Professor.